is the place where real dialogue matters.
Make some noise for that sound, man.
It is time to take flight with Audio Airstrike.
This is Audio Airstrike, and I'm Everett Hall-McNeill. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, nothing fails. We always have a change of scenery and always have a change of angles. We want to thank you for joining us. Now, I have a special guest at this time. He is a musician. He is a studio engineer. This man has been around the block with music for a very long time.
Made me sound cheap. Sorry.
He is an astute artist. That make you sound more expensive?
Yeah, there you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got DLF in the building. Happy to have you here, man. How you been?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Okay, cool, man. So give us a little bit of backstory about yourself so people can kind of get to know you, kind of get an idea of who you are, the type of musician you are, and stuff of that nature.
All right. Well, I've been in music for at least 30 years. I've been doing all types of things. What I've been doing mostly the last 10 years or so is writing for film and TV, which has been fun. The other thing that I've been doing is working with a bunch of different people, just trying to do all kinds of music projects and things to keep myself busy. Recently, I decided to start working on another album, so that's gonna take up most of my time for the next few months, and then probably by, let's hope, fall, end of the year, I'll be releasing that.
Awesome.
So I'm just a musician out there, just trying to stay busy. I started back when I was in my 20s, working in a studio. I built my own studio and was working with a bunch of artists and stuff like that. I had a partner who had another studio, so we collaborated with a bunch of different people, which was fun because I got a lot of experience working with a lot of different genres. And I guess that's pretty much it. My style, because I think you asked me that the first time I met you, and I'm like, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to anything yet, but it's kind of hard. It's mostly electronic. I started my film and TV career with dance electronica, but I have mixed like adult contemporary and jazz and a whole bunch of stuff. Right now, I'm working on a few tunes that are kind of like, I don't know if neo soul is still a genre, but like kind of like a neo soul electronic kind of thing.
Yeah, it's still a thing.
Just kind of one of my big favorite artists of all time is The Art of Noise. They're based out of England, and excuse me, they just put stuff together and do all kinds of funky stuff with all kinds of instruments and pots and pans and all kinds of stuff. So I kind of make that kind of noise in my music as well. So I just I don't really try to hold to one thing. I just try to do what comes out of here.
Right.
And out of here.
Oh, absolutely. All right, absolutely. That's good, man. Yeah. That's good. You know, I had to bring you in because we just had the Grammys this past week.
Right.
So I wanted to kind of get your spiel on that. I just wanted to list off some notable stuff that happened, and I do have the results of the Grammys here. I'm not going to go too much into it, but Billie Eilish basically cleaned up.
Yes.
For an 18-year-old who just turned 18, who created an album out of her house.
Not only out of her house, out of her parents' house, in a bedroom with her brother.
Right. Like she still could have been put in timeout.
Right. But exactly. Basically, what they said. And by the way, this year was probably the first time I had watched the Grammys from beginning to end, for the first time in probably a good 10, 15 years. But like one of the things that both of them kept saying was, we're shocked. We didn't expect to be up here winning all these awards. We just did this in our bedroom. And, you know, they were humble. They were apologetic to some of the people that didn't win. But that was a good look for them to do that, because they could have been snotty and then had the whole world turn on them in a matter of seconds. Right.
You know what I mean? Because especially this finicky fan base, finicky world we in.
Yeah, I'll even I'll jump to a conversation we had the other day about Tyler the Creator. Before, because of interviews and stuff that I've seen him in TV shows, and he had something on Cartoon Network and all this kind of stuff. He seemed to me as somebody who's like super arrogant and somebody I really didn't even want to take the time to look at or listen to or whatever. Saw his Grammy show, which was like, it was wild. And then when he won the award, he was so humble that he's like, now I'm a fan. Mm-hmm. And his mother ran up on stage with him, and he was just like thanking everybody for what did he say? He's like, thank you for believing in my wacky, crazy ideas. He brought up his homeboy who's been with him since the beginning. So he was just a very humble guy. So now I'm a fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to hear certain things about artists, but when you see it live in your face and it's right there, it's like, okay, there's proof here that he's not who everybody says he is. Right. It's good to hear stories like that, because sometimes artists confirm if they're a jerk or not, if they're like a douchebag or not. You be saying, this Bama is stupid, yo, just ignorant. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like one of those situations where it's like, I'm glad that these two, even though that they got the Grammy, they still were very appreciative. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Lizzo got best solo pop performance, and also, I think, is that all she got?
That's all she got, which I was surprised. I thought she was going to get like best record, and I haven't listened to the whole album, but everything I've heard so far is pretty good. And she's been, at least in my circles, she's been like the talk for the last few months. Mm-hmm. I actually, that one song, I don't even know what it's titled. I'm also really, I don't remember. I'm really bad at song titles and names of groups, so it's amazing that I know the two that we're talking about right now. But it's got my head na 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 na.
Was it Damn Good? No. Let me see what this could possibly be.
It's she did a medley on the Grammys, but like she was on Saturday Night Live a few weeks ago, mm-hmm. and that was like the first song that she did. But again, another artist. Good as Hell? I think so.
Yeah, that's the one.
Another artist who impressed me, because I'm old school. I've been around the block for a while, and I just made myself sound cheap.
Go closer to the mic.
I'm sorry. I just made myself look cheap. And over the last, I don't know, I have two boys, so I listen to what they're listening to, and I'm not really impressed. But the artists that are coming out now, like Lizzo, she broke the weight barrier. She's beautiful. She's very talented. One of the things that I loved,
and confident too.
One of the things, or two of the things I loved, one, all her dancers are heavyset dancers, and she breaks out a flute. Mm-hmm. Like, who does that? Right.
That makes you unique. You don't see a lot of black women performers,
exactly,
or any black artist turn around and pop out with a flute. Like, that just separates you and makes you look unique. That one thing.
The only other black artist right now, Alicia Keys is kind of like that, but she's every time you say her name, it's like piano,
right?
But like her, she was in the Grammys too, and she played the piano, and then she jumped up and shredded on the guitar, mm-hmm. and then sat back down and played the piano. So it's just like, that's what's catching my eye these days, and that's what's making me like the newer music, because I think I told you before, a lot of the stuff that my kids listen to, they listen to a lot of hip hop and rap. I grew up with Run DMC, Naughty by Nature, NWA, mm-hmm. Dre, Snoop, those guys to me are rappers. Some of the guys out there today, other than Chance the Rapper,
the obvious three: Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick.
Yeah, but Drake doesn't really rap. But
Drake's kind of all over the place.
But what's a Gambino?
Childish Gambino.
Yeah. Those guys, they're in that break the barrier, in my opinion, break the barrier kind of thing with the newer music.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, with the performances, what I'm shocked about, and I'll be honest, I thought that Lil Nas X was going to have, he did win Best Pop Duo or Group Performance, but kind of surprising he didn't win Best Song of the Year.
Yeah. But that song's a little, isn't it like a little older though? It was like the beginning of the year. I kind of see like a lot of people winning.
Popped like it popped. And by the time summer got here, it was like the biggest song out.
Was it?
Yeah, now that I remember, now that I'm looking back on last year, it was like by the time summer hit, it was the biggest song amongst everybody. I know to some people it's kid specific based on how catchy it is.
Yeah.
But everybody that was the number one song played.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like shocking to me. Like
that he didn't
pick. Yeah, like this didn't get picked. Like,
yeah.
You think of records and stuff that it broke and everything like that, and this kid went from.
So how are the Grammys? How are the winners decided? Do you know? Like
it's amongst committees. Similar to how the Oscars is decided. Like it's not really a people's choice type of style of voting. It's more like there's like a committee of respected constituents that sit over there and talk about, okay, what is the deal here? I don't know what the age range is in that group, but based on the selections, like I know that most of the committees based on the choices that I've seen aren't really millennials.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. Because I think now if the Grammy committee was more of a had like half millennials and half of the older generation before them, I think you would have saw a lot of the people that in my generation who I think would be picked would actually be picked.
Gotcha.
You get what I'm saying? But it's a little different because I think you got a little bit of an older generation in there. I'm not saying, everybody's walking around with walkers talking about, well, if it don't sound like Elvis, I'm not voting for it. But I'm not, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's one of those situations where they're open. If they weren't open, Billie Eilish would have cleaned up last night. But it's like you're dealing with, they view certain genres a certain way, so they may not pick the right person that, if you're not a fan of the culture, we're telling you this was the song, this guy, and then the Grammys will pick somebody else because they don't have an ear to what that particular culture of fans want.
Got you.
Or listen to, or where they were, their perspective.
Right.
So that's kind of like, for example, since we breaking down Grammys, Diddy talked about, I guess he was honored at Clive Davis's event, and Diddy talked about how the Grammys really don't respect, and he said it respectfully, he said the Grammys really don't respect black music as a whole and disrespect hip-hop on a consistent basis with some of the choices that they have picked in the past.
Right.
Tyler, the Creator, has briefly, he eloquently put his 2 cents out there about racism in the Grammys right after he won his own. Did it in a respectful way. So people feel some type of way about the Grammys. Yes, it is a prestigious thing that's been around for years, but also people, especially now, aren't really sold on this. We're happy you won a Grammy, but at the same time, there's politics that we don't like that the Grammy does.
Right. It's kind of like the good old boys club. It's the same thing with Oscars. It's like those are the Grammys and the Oscars are the two award shows that are kind of regulated. And then you have others like the only one I can think of musically is the MTV Awards,
right?
Because that's like by the people,
right?
And you can tell it's totally different. It's more laid back. It seems like more fun. Same thing with the SAG Awards for movies and TV,
right? It's
just like those awards are from peers and fans, and there's less prejudice going on,
right?
in those.
There's less politics involved. Like, people are really voting to be like, all right, who's the best?
Right.
You know what I mean? Just who's the best. We happy y'all nominate. We just trying to award who's the best and move on. You know what I mean? It seems like some awards are more chill than these two because there's more. Anytime something gets more prestigious and bigger, the potential for politics always gets heightened.
Right.
And it's one of those situations where it causes, especially if something happens, like you have a situation. I remember a situation years ago. Kendrick didn't get a rap award and Macklemore did. And people were so outraged that Macklemore texted Kendrick saying, well, you should have got this. And you see, now we're in 2020, Kendrick, I don't know who's listening to Macklemore still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I had to like think for a minute.
Right.
What songs, you know?
Right. I mean, you know, in 2013, he was, you know, had some of the biggest pop records out. I call them pop because they sound more poppy.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at now, we look at Kendrick as like easily, you know, one of the top rappers ever. Pulitzer Award for his album Damn and stuff of that nature. And where the heck is Macklemore at? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Flavor of the month, it feels like. So it's one of those. So when situations like that have happened, and probably, and I'm only speaking from hip hop perspective because that's what I listen to predominantly. However, I'm pretty sure there have been other genres that have sat there and been like, they picked this to win best album. They picked
most
this
definitely.
to
you can even like when they go through the crowd, you can see the people going,
really?
What?
Right.
You know.
Right. And it's one of those situations when you have that happen over and over again, it causes like a scuffle. Like it causes like not really like somebody about to fight, but it's like kind of the side eye like for real.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they won. Get out of here.
Exactly.
Kind of reminds me of like Chadwick Boseman when he found out the Green Book won Best Picture and he turned around and looked. It's like, come on, fam. Oh man, but we were talking about the Grammys, and we were talking about the performances, and we saw all that. Lizzo did a good job. Billie Eilish did a good job, and they had Lil Nas X out there with BTS and stuff of that nature. So they're aware of what's hot. That's what we know. When you look, you being a musician from years, and just seeing the manifestation of different genres blending, different sounds coming in, different culture shifts that you weren't prepared for and stuff of that nature. What are some of the pros and cons of right now?
I can't think of any cons offhand. I think the biggest pro is that people are getting back to where in the 70s and 80s, it's just like, hey, dude, let's make some music. You know, Aerosmith got back on stage with Run DMC. But like back in the day, Sly and the Family Stone would, you know, get on stage with whoever. A lot of English bands did a lot of stuff with Motown. It's just, it seemed like the genres for a while segregated everyone, but it seems like people are starting to come back together and kind of say, hey, we're musicians. I know I do this, you do that, but let's see what we can do. Perfect example is Nas. He came out with a K-pop band, Billy Ray Cyrus, and who was the little kid? I can't remember the little kid.
Lil Nas X?
No, there was a little tiny boy that was.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah, there was a little. I hate to get racial, but a little white kid was on stage with them. I don't remember who he was, but like all those guys came together to sing this one song, and they were enjoying themselves, and that's kind of like what music should be like. It shouldn't be, you know, I get it. We have different genres and stuff, but it's not a competition. Right. It should be like a big family. That's one of the things I love about going to music conferences, because you have like 300 people or 3,000 people or more. And, you know, you have rappers, you have country people, you have people from Germany, Italy, all over the world doing their own things, classical, and everybody just gets together and they'll find a corner. They'll have their little micro mini instruments with them and just start jamming. And that's kind of what I saw in the Grammys. That's kind of what I'm starting to see. I don't want to say it's becoming mainstream, but this is what I'm seeing in more music these days.
Yeah, you're seeing more community-based
I mean,
pieces.
Tyler, the Creator, came out with Boyz II Men, and I can't remember the other dude's name. Told you I was bad with names, so yeah, I can't remember his name, but he came out with another rap artist, and then Boyz II Men, and you know, some people would say, oh, they're just trying to like, you know, get some fan base going on again, you know, like the older groups. But honestly, I just think it's like, you know, there's more of a unity going on now. Part of it, and I know we're going to get to that later, but part of it too was that night right before the Grammys, Kobe died. Mm-hmm. So everybody was feeling a lot of stuff. Right. But one of the other nice things that I liked about Aerosmith's performance, I think this was before Run DMC came out, he walked up to Lizzo and he said, "I fucking love you." Mm-hmm. Steven Tyler. That was beautiful. And that probably made her day, because that was somebody who was, you know, he's a rock icon, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody comes up to her, she's just getting into the thing. She doesn't even do his kind of music, but this old ass man comes up to her and goes, "I fucking love you." That made her night. I know it made her night. It made my night. You know what I mean? Right. And it's just like, it's stuff like that. We need more of that everywhere, but like just more of that in the music industry. Yeah, especially when you sit over there and you look at these younger artists coming up, they're trying to get back to, I think now we're at everybody is more aware. Everybody's not trying to follow a trend. Everybody's trying to be their own individual self. That's what I like about the type of era that we're in. Also, the fact that now you have accessibility to artists around the world. With technology that we have now and stuff of that nature, like, you have that at your fingertips. Exactly. So if you want to know what music is sounding like in Africa, you can get to that. You ain't got to like go to Africa and find out. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's right there in front of your face if you want to check out what's going on in Australia and the music scene out there and just get different sounds. And if you want to go out to Barbados, different places everywhere got different sounds. And it's for everybody. Yep. Everybody has certain life experiences and stuff of that nature. There's at least one song for everybody's individual life experience. There's at least one. Everybody's like, well, I got that one song that's like the story of my life. Everybody got one. And now, especially with the accessibility, the fact that people can put themselves on, the fact that artists can take back their own platform, the fact that they don't have to worry about, well, I should say, if they do it right, they don't have to worry about people screwing them over. You now have artists that are more intelligent now than way back then, that are getting the money that they deserve. I know there's always kind of like a checks and balances with negotiations and stuff like that, give and take here and there. But it's one of those situations where artists are more aware of business. Why? Because of technology, the access of information, the amount of exposure that you can get, the amount of fans that you can touch within the click. There's a bad side to it too, but there's also a good side. I'm just trying to stay positive. All of these things work to the artist's advantage. If the label don't want you, cool. Go on SoundCloud, put up your songs, and do open mics to the point you have a fan base, and then start your tours. Right. Like, I'm surprised, and that's the thing. And I know a lot of people say, well, you know, Everett or open mic is really not. I'm like, dude, a fan base starts off small. Yeah, fan base is a fan base. A fan base is a fan base. If somebody turned around, and I'm kind of giving somebody game here, and they don't even realize it. If somebody turned around and looked at the calendar and checked out every open mic that was booked this year in different areas and just started going to all of them on weekends where they know they're off, you're building a fan base. Exactly. You're building a fan base. If you know that this big open mic is coming up in this town and you go
and you have your stuff ready and you have all the social media ready and all that, there could be 1,000 people. Okay, that's 1,000 people you weren't touching at first.
Exactly.
So if you multiply that by 10, by 20, if you do it 50 times, if you spend your 10,000 hours doing that, bro, next thing you know, you're getting paid to do real tours. Next thing you know, you're opening up for this person.
Yeah, somebody walks in, sees you.
Right.
Hey, you need to open up for me, that kind of thing.
Right. It could be one of those things like I've heard heads sleep in cars, and the next thing you know, somebody heard their music because it was that great. Yeah. If your music's that great, you're going to get the reaction. I don't care what algorithm it is. If people find your music catchy and great and it hits them a certain way, it's going to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it don't go back to the drawing board, figure it out. But that's a whole nother, you know what I mean? It's one of those situations where, yes, it's exciting for an artist, but they have to be willing to not just put songs out and don't perform.
Right.
It's got to be a plan put in place. Like, okay, I see these open mics. I see these high schools. Let me perform my song at the assemblies in high schools or open mic. If your music is that safe to even do that, or it don't have to be safe at all. If it's it depends on the event. You know what I'm saying? They can go out and really expose themselves that way. Everybody's got a cell phone. So if your performance starts getting real hot and it turns like somebody's out there with a camera filming it, if you can't afford a film crew, you'll get to that point. But these are the little things that I think most artists miss because they are quick to go in the studio, but they don't focus on investing in everything else. Like the video, hey, let's go to open mics and let's go to some bars downtown. Figuring out a plan where, okay, I'll break this down to you. Let's say let's say we'll use Baltimore because this is the closest one. Let me say this. Baltimore music scene has not been the same in a very, very long time. I'm just using that as an example. So let's say if I turn around and I use Baltimore. I know there's at least, I'm just high plaging here. Let's say there's like 5 open mics. There's about 5 good bars that have good bands coming through. It's an artist bar. It's an artist restaurant. And a lot of people go to hear original music. Let's say there's 5 of those that are taking place within 5 months. Let's say you as an artist, you go out there and you perform all of those. Let's say 1,000 people are at each. Bro, you just not only did that several times, now you got a possible paying gig there. If they know better, a possibly playing gig there. You got somewhere where you're familiar with the promoter, not only the promoter, but also the whole entire staff and management, so you can network with them. You're building your fan base. Now, take that same blueprint when it comes to performing, and now start taking that blueprint and hit every single last city that there is. The big cities, the New Yorks, the DCs, the LAs, the Atlantas, Nashville, Tennessee. Need I say more? That's like a music hardcore town. Like, just taking that blueprint. I think that's the one thing I notice that when I look at a lot of local artists, they miss that blueprint. And I'm not even a musician. I'm just a thinker. I'm a creative thinker. I'm a more of a filmmaker type guy, and I'm more of a podcaster type person. That's my creative juices. But like, I was just, because I dabbled in, I ain't gonna say I dabbled. I was full blown into video. I was full blown into doing video production for artists. And that was the one thing that was kind of like the thing that would kind of nip them, was you guys aren't performing in front of people enough to get yourselves out there.
What do you mean? How did that come out of them doing videos? Like,
well, I would watch how they move. I would watch their, I always look at the overall picture. Okay. The reality of the situation is that when I sit over there and I'm looking at what an artist does, between the manager, between the stage manager, club manager, the manager that manages the whole thing, and then you have the publicist and all that, and then whoever's marketing for them, when it comes to the videographer, you are not their most major concern. So me knowing this, now I'm going to look at the whole operation as to how you run your brand. How some people were running their brands was they weren't performing enough. They were always performing local, where they're from, around town, that sort of stuff, instead of going out and performing in places that you're not even familiar with. Going out to LA's and doing a bunch of open mics. Going to New York and doing a bunch of open mics. You're doing a tour, that's cool, but all these places that you're familiar with them already. You need to start doing a tour or networking with somebody and being like, hey, I'm trying to just do a couple open mics out in LA. Try to come for a weekend in advance. Let me know what's good and start doing it that way. A lot of artists think too local, and I feel like they got potential to think globally. And I don't care what the age group is. I think that potential is there, but some artists are looking for the white flame, that song to pop, and then sometimes it don't come that way.
Right.
It only happens to a few artists. I'm not saying it don't happen, but it only happens to like very few. Everybody else has to go on their own version of a Chitlin circuit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Excuse me. I know a few local artists, and they've done the let's get out of the comfort zone. I'm dying. They've gone to the New England states, which is kind of cool. Had some good times and stuff like that. I think a lot of it comes with finances. Are you willing to make that jump to get out of your comfort zone to make the same money that you would make at home or less? Because if you're traveling, and obviously you're not going to be going first class by any means.
No, you want to catch Spirit.
Yeah. You're going to catch Spirit, or you're going to rent a car or take your own car.
Right. And drive that joint down.
So that takes up finances too. And that's what I'm seeing from the people that I know. Some people, like myself, I never know if I'm performing because I want to or if because people are telling me to. And with that being said, since I don't have that desire to move around a lot anyway, I tend to stay local. A friend of mine right now that I'm working on some music with, he's like, this is all great and the studio's all great and, making songs great, but I need more. So he has the mindset to make that move and go different places. So I think it all depends on what you want out of what you're doing.
Right. Because it's one of those things, and I think that was key too, was with artists that I would get to know and talk about. It was like, okay, what is your end game here? And sometimes a lot of the stuff that I would saw is like, I would watch from a distance. I stay in my lane. I play my role. But I would realize that some of these artists are confused as to what their end game is, because doing open mics in another state is great and networking is great, but where the funds are going to come from?
Right.
So is it going to take something where it's like proper planning will do good, proper performance? Or is it one of those situations where it's like, how, as to what is his goal, his or her goal as an artist, and how much are they really trying to sacrifice to get there? Because it's going to require some sacrifices, like with anything. I'll go back to me because I know my experiences. I sacrificed a lot to keep this podcast going. And through all the different changes and stuff of that nature and doing this, it required sacrifices. There were times, I think it was one time I got invited to go to a Nationals game. I skipped it to do a podcast and made sure I came with the episode that week. And he was like, you couldn't have did another day? I said, bro, like, if I don't do it now, it's going to slow down and I'm going to procrastinate on this. I need to do it now while I have this ample time. While I take advantage of time.
do you think that your fans would slip away if you miss that?
I think,
like, do you have a set every Thursday? The new podcast is.
So my goal is every weekend, by the end of each week, Audio Airstrike is putting out an episode or two. At least each week. At least the end of each week, you're going to hear something from Audio Airstrike between me and a guest who I'm bringing at that particular point. And that's what I try to base that goal off of, because there needs to be a consistency there. There are a lot of other podcasts. I've seen podcasts come and go. And I've given some strong advice to other podcasters. And one thing I told them was check your ego at the door and make sure you're consistent. You do those two things and you very communicative about what you want out of this, you should not have any problems. And if you do have problems, you'll work together to work it out. You won't get selfish. The first thing I tell everybody that asks me, that I tell any podcaster that's growing a podcast brand, it's the first thing I tell them. And I don't have a problem telling them that, because the experiences I've been through, I've learned from. And I also know where I want to take this podcast brand. Now, some people that I've coached and or just, heard out. I'm trying to make myself sound like I'm a coach on the sideline. A lot of the stuff that I've done has been more about, I'm here to assist and help and kind of be a servant and guide people, not necessarily try to dictate where they go with their podcast. And so whenever they've asked me for advice, I ask, what's your end game? I've had some people told me we want this many people listening to us so we can make a living off of it, so we can quit our jobs. And I've heard people tell me we're not really in it for the money. We're just looking to do something fun and kind of, take kind of use this as a creative escape from our work. So, it's one of those situations. I've talked to people on both ends. And I've helped them, I've given them enough advice where it's a good enough place for them to get started. So that's been kind of my route of doing things. Like me starting a podcast, it was a little bit of both. I needed the creative escape because I was creatively drained for a while. So I needed an escape. And then when I saw what podcasts could do potentially as a career and stuff of that nature, and I saw what Joe Rogan was doing. I saw what Charlamagne and Andrew Schultz was doing. I saw what Joe Budden was doing. I saw what Don Tony and Kevin Castle, which is a wrestling podcast, what they were doing. And different people that were learning under them were getting on and doing their own podcasts as well and stuff of that nature. So I saw what these other notable podcasters were doing, and I was like, I get to have engaging conversations with people and potentially make a living at it. It's great. And, our platform, this platform, it grew, and we've had co-hosts, we've had reoccurring guests. Different things have changed over the past couple of years. But the one thing that hasn't changed is mutual and great conversations on just life in general, and also life lessons that we learn from pop culture events. So that's pretty much in a nutshell has been my perspective as a creative when it comes to, there is a way to do both. I have fun doing this because it's rewarding to have conversations with people. And if we have opposing perspectives, that's great. If we, mutually agree on something, that's great too. And that's been kind of the theme of this show, is just to, and not that I'm doing some shameless plug on my own show, but the whole goal of this show.
You need to get some product placement because you're talking way too much about yourself. No, just kidding.
I seriously need a couple sponsors. But
seriously, folks,
we could use that. Brother trying to, make some more ends. But one of the things that, as a creative, and I think that especially now, especially when it comes to music, and with every genre, I think that there's part of us that wants this to be a living for this particular reason. We want a sense of freedom. We want a sense of ownership. We want a sense of escape. Those three things blended together are the reason why you see a lot of people creating their own platforms. Well, if you don't see the value in me, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make my own platform with whatever I'm doing. And you look at musicians, I look at what you're doing, I look at what other artists are doing, and you guys are doing just that. Now, do I know what every artist's end game is and what they want? I'm not God. I can't determine that. You know what I mean? I can't guide that. Like, that's something that I can root for the person and give them advice when they need it. But at the end of the day, it's up to them, and whatever their vision is, they got to carry it out. So that's where I'm kind of at. I will always be on the side of the creators. I will always be on the side of helping people out that respect my kindness and support. And that's how you should carry it. I think that's how artists should carry it. I think that's how everybody who's a creative should carry it. And to see what I saw at the Grammys with the sense of community, even though it was, the aftermath of a tragedy, it's a lot.
Yeah. One thing I'll say, comment on a couple of things you just said. For me, it's never been about money, even though it is about money, even though it's not, if that makes any sense. Like I said, I started doing film and TV stuff started back in 2008. And that was just because somebody said, hey, you need to go to this music conference in LA. It's great, blah, 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 blah. You'll have a great time, yada, yada, yada. I went there fresh out of a band, not really digging the whole band thing because I like performing, but I don't really like performing. Again, I mentioned a friend that I'm working with music with. He loves performing. That's why the part of the music that we're working on right now, he wants to perform it. Like, he has a deep desire to do that. I don't really have a desire to do that. So I went out there clean, a virgin in this vast sea of musicians.
Right.
And, out of that came, hey, you can make the music you want to make and make money out of it. Which was great for a while. But then I would say 5 or 6 years into it, I got tired of somebody telling me what they needed and going and writing for that. And for me, I lost the part of the music that made me love it so much and want to do it all the time, which was I wasn't writing from here anymore. I was writing from up here because somebody would say, I need some happy piano. Give me 5 tracks. And don't get me wrong, royalty checks are wonderful.
They sure are.
But after a while, that kind of burned me out because I was just like, you know what? I don't want somebody to tell me to write, these dance electronic tracks. I want to sit at the keyboard and just fart around until some funky noise with a beat comes out, and it's amazing. So I kind of fell off for a couple of years, and I didn't write anything because of that. And I would say probably
you were creatively drained at that point.
I was creatively drained. The funny thing, and my brother will tell anyone, I was still writing though. My subconscious still came out and was writing. How I missed all this, I don't know. But a couple years ago, I started getting back into writing music. I even started writing for film and TV again. And then I started finding all this music. And I'm like, where did that come from? It's just like, and I have notes on stuff and I'm just like, I don't remember writing this stuff. So I was still doing it because music is something it's been a part of me my whole life. So it's a part of me. And I said this today to you. It's like, every time I try to get out, they pull me right back in. Music's been the same way over the years because every time I try to leave it, somehow or another, I'm always back. And so a long time ago, I said, well, I'm never leaving you again. I'm not going to quit you. But I do take a step back every now and then just to see if I'm going where I want to go. And now, finally, at 52 years old, I am finally at a place where I'm digging what I'm doing, and I'm learning new things, which is great. A really good friend of mine got me hooked on. I have in the studio. I have this is going to be a product thing.
That's cool.
Native Instruments Machina.
Okay.
Which I love. It's great. And last year sometime, he called me up. I was like, dude, I just bought an MPC Live. And I'm like, what's that? Because I know what an MPC is. Mm. And that's like $4,000. That's not going to ever be in my studio.
Right.
He's like, they like broke down the MPC. And it's like half the size of the machine. And it's only $1,100. Got off the phone with him. Ordered my MPC Live. So it's like, and that's a whole nother world, because now you have today's technology in something that I used back in the early 90s.
Right.
You know? So, and that's the other thing too. Technology has changed so much where, and you said this earlier, I can collab with my friend in New York, in California, in Australia. It's just a matter of writing the music and throwing it on your Google Drive so they can access it. You know, it's like, so that technology has just opened up everything for me as well. And now I'm at a point where I'm just loving what I'm doing. And that's another reason why I decided to do another album, because I want to see how much I've grown from the first one. I think the first one was, I did the first one in 2009, 2010. So
that's awesome, man.
I think I went off on a tangent. I'm not quite sure where I was going with that, but, I thought, because you were talking about the money part. So I realized that I'm going to do this whether I'm making money or not. And I think once I figured that out, that kind of took that block away, and I just started working again.
Right, and I think it's very important that that there's that sense of balance, because some people don't do it because they love it. Like, I direct and write because I love to direct and write. I love doing podcasts because I love to do podcasting. It's weird for me because my brain is like, somehow I've been able to understand both sides of it and be at a happy medium. Mm-hmm. I love podcasting. Love it. If you was to tell me tomorrow that I can do this full time and get a salary from it, what you think I'm gonna do? What you think I'm gonna do? Of course I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? It's one of those situations where in order for somebody to be paid well, they have to love doing what they're doing. And because that adds value to what you're able to do. And I think a lot of people miss it. I think a lot of people get caught up in what you was caught up in was, I stopped loving it because somebody was telling me like just what they wanted, and I was just kind of like a puppet on a string. Well, here you go, mentally, and your heart wasn't in it. And I think kind of taking that time to get to that happy medium where you're able to, it's like, my heart's in it this time, so I'm going to push. And that's why, so that's why some people, move on and they do ownership. That's why some people move on and they do their own brands. It's because there's a sense of, when you are at a place creatively where there's a sense of freedom and your heart's in it, that's like heaven to a creative. Mm-hmm. Because there's no plateau, there's nobody you feel like that's above you right here being like, I need that. None of that. When you're in your space and it's just you or whoever you're collaborating with and all you guys are on the same page, or it's just you and you're just able to freely do what you do without any restrictions, it's the best place for a creative to be in, because out of that spontaneous element could come something that's very special. And when I think of people that are creative and special, stuff of that nature, and that use that that artsy feel and stuff of that nature and really go after it, they end up becoming some of the most successful artists of our generation. They weren't getting paid off the bat at first. They were doing it because they loved to do it. And then because they were that good at it, people saw the talent and was willing to pay for it.
Right.
And, I always tell, that was something I always struggled with. There were times I didn't know what my worth was. There were times I was, letting people use my worth in a very improper way. And when I sat down one day, and this was still in my late 20s, I'm 29. I really sat down and I really looked at the over situation, and I was like, I'm worth more than this. The time I put in, the amount of advice that I've given out, and it's not, I didn't say it from like an arrogant spirit. I didn't say it from like a cocky spirit. I just was like, just having that, and everybody's religious beliefs is different, but I had that one-on-one talk with God. I was like, okay, why are these circumstances happening where I feel like I'm worth more and I'm going above and beyond where people won't even go above for me? You know what I mean? So it put me in a weird space where it was like, what am I being shown here? And I felt like God was like, okay, here's the reality of the situation. You change the atmosphere where somebody goes creatively in a positive way to the point it elevates their talent unselfishly and without any arrogance, which is great. The problem is, and he was revealing to me this, people see that and are looking to pry and attack your value, your worth, and for their selfish benefit. And once they get some of that, they kick you to the curb. They can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, but they can say what they want, they can say you're a nice person, but they actually speak a lot of words, they will kick you to the curb, and you need to watch out for that. And that's what shifted my whole thinking. That's what shifted my whole thinking was, I was like, all right, so I just need to, I can still be to that point, but I have to pick and I have to be more picky and choosy about who I reveal that to, because I've heard this same story with several artists. And that's something where the sense of community amongst the Grammys is great. The sense of community amongst people is great. The sense of community amongst other artists in different artistic forms is great. But there has to be some form of respect for this person, that if this person is valued at this, he needs to be valued at that. If that person's respected for this, he needs to be constantly respected at that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why sometimes in certain conversations, I come off like a capitalist to you because of what I've been through.
I don't know. You've been talking about money for a long time.
Right. Well, we had a conversation. It was a funny conversation. And it was like, you were talking about like studio stuff. And I said, dude, if they ain't paying you this much an hour, don't even waste your time.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's one of those situations where I think when it comes to creatives, the first step is to do it with your heart. Very first step. Everything will come. You'll learn some of the lessons that you need to learn. You'll learn who to be with and who not to be with. You'll learn who values you, who doesn't. But the one thing that you always got to make, that people always got to make sure, is that people's heart is into this, because artists are sensitive about their stuff. Every artist. Yeah, every artist is sensitive about their stuff.
Because if you are a true creative, because there are people that they made themselves creative. If you're a true creative, you are creating from the heart. So if your heart's not in it,
it'll show.
And our side hustle, I've told people, don't let what we do here affect what your creativity does out there, because it's two different worlds. When I walk into the place that we work, I don't don't want to say that I don't try to be creative, but I know what their limits are. And I know what they'll do if I go too far. So I put my creative hat in my pocket and I put on the business hat. We'll call it business creative. I just made a new topic, business creative.
This will be the name of the episode, business creative.
So I put the business creative on so I can still do my job creatively, but it's not gonna take away from what I do outside of work. Because it's like there was a person that worked there that was like, oh my gosh, this job is sucking my creativity. And I'm like, why is it? What you do here has nothing to do with what you do outside.
Right.
Stay true to yourself outside. Now, if they want it, I throw some at them, but it's a business. So they're not going to want what I can give them. Mm-hmm. They're going to want a dimmed down version of that. And that's what I do.
Right.
I'm running off on tangents.
Ain't no problem. Speaking of somebody who had an impact and speaking of somebody who is creative, we need to touch on this. I waited for some time to touch on this because this affected me the whole day. And I felt like a family member passed. Kobe Bryant tragically passed away at 41 due to a helicopter crash. It wasn't just him. It was another set of families, and my condolences to them. I don't have their names at this time, but I do want to honor them. I don't have their names in front of me, but we want to honor them as well. But also, his daughter was a part of that tragedy, and sadly, all of them end up transitioning. My initial thoughts, and I'll let you take it after. My initial thought was deep sadness. At first, it was shock because it felt like a glitch in the Matrix, like he wasn't supposed to go, and especially not this way. Mm-hmm. When you look at his career, the number of championships, the number of MVPs, but also the fact that he was saying, all right, I'm done, and I'm going to move forward. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. Getting an Oscar, being creative and going out and actually touching people and giving people advice, and watching him become this, going from a 17-year-old kid to a man that was closed off to retiring from the game and then opening himself up more to people so people can see another side of him. Because we know Kobe for being just a tenacious killer on the court. That's what we know. Like Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, is the closest killer to Jordan. That's what we know. But outside of all that, devoted father, very sharp and articulate, knew several different languages, talked to people overseas in their native tongue, was always willing to challenge himself, and that Mamba mentality that everybody talks about. The consistency and excellence that he displayed, not only on the court, but off. And you either got with it or it just wasn't for you. And one of the situations is that, sadly, he had so much more to give and he just wasn't able to get it. It was one of those things where, and you can tell how greatly of his impact that it was, because there are people that grew up watching Kobe. I wasn't a big basketball person when I was growing up, but you best believe I knew who Kobe Bryant was. You best believe if he was on television, I wasn't going to turn it. If I just flipped and watched, I wasn't going to turn it because he was that good. And the amount of love that was poured out was definitely needed, and definitely spoke to his impact over the world as a whole. And it wasn't just about basketball. It wasn't just about the number of championships. It was about that he made people believe that they could accomplish great things despite circumstances, despite it not being perfect. He didn't, not everything he did, not everything he went through was all peaches and cream during his career. Right. So he was from the distance, and I don't know him personally, obviously, but he was an honest person, a genuine guy, and judging by the players that he went to school with and judging by the players that he ended up playing against, he was more than just somebody that you would love to be around to compete with because he took you to another level. No, he was a genuine, good, wholesome dude. And that will incredibly be missed.
I heard the news driving back from Rochester, and like you said, it was bizarro world. I kind of equate it to like when Prince died, when Michael Jackson died, when Princess Diana died, when George Michael died, the greats that we grew up with and felt like we knew them, and just immediately felt like empty, like a hole was just shot through my body. Again, I'm like you. I'm not really a big basketball guy. I was a basketball guy when Michael Jordan was playing the first and second time. But it just really, I couldn't believe it because I was in a car driving. I got home, turned on the TV, saw the smoking helicopter. Why they thought that was a good shot to have on TV, I don't know. But saw the smoking helicopter, saw the thousands of people at the Staples Center, and I was like, wow, this really happened. My son, who's a big basketball player, has barely spoken in 2 days. That's how affected he is. But like you said, I know Kobe from the court. I know Kobe more so from the humanitarian he became after retiring. And I think one of the things he said in his speech, he's like, I'm just going to the next level. Gonna go see what's next. And, he did a whole bunch of stuff. And I saw a lot of people crying and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't go there because, like I said, I don't know the man. A lot of people that were at the Grammys said a lot of great things about him. A few people had hung out with him a couple days before that. It's a big emotional thing. He was a celebrity. He was a hero.
He put LA on his back. He was a representation. I know he's not from LA like that, but I mean, he literally became a fabric of what LA is.
Yeah.
And he became, I mean, you had Magic Johnson say it himself, he's the greatest Laker ever.
Yeah.
For Magic Johnson to say that you're the greatest Laker ever,
that's saying something.
Right.
But like he just to me he is kind of like the word just went out of my head. He's like that person who, I said it earlier, humanitarian. Mm-hmm. He was a humanitarian, and he brought people together, and he wanted to help people. And it's a really sad time. But what was really nice is to see not just basketball players saying stuff about him, ex-presidents, leaders of other countries, like everybody just feeding in, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, this happened. And it's like that shows what an impact he had on everybody.
Right.
And like I said, for me, it was like a feeling. I love George Michael. I love Prince. And for me, it was devastating when those guys just all of a sudden were gone. Even Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. I don't want to leave him out.
Right.
But it's just, what do you do? It's like, what do you do when that figure, I was talking to, why were we talking about Princess Diana the other day? I was talking to my mom about Princess Diana because of the news scandal going on, the royal family with, I think it's Harry and Meghan.
They just want independence, that's all.
You see how I don't pay attention to the...
It's just an independence flex, that's all.
Right. But I mean, everybody wants to pretend that this is the first time that happened. It's not the first time that's happened. It's happened like every other decade, if not every decade. But no, it's just a great loss. I still feel sad. I turned on the TV yesterday. They're still talking about it, of course. And I was just like, wow, that really happened. And it's just, I don't know. I don't really have many words for it because it's just a shock. It's, when somebody especially when somebody is, let's just say 80 to 100 years old, you get sad, but they're 80 to 100 years old.
Right.
When somebody that's younger than I am, first of all, but like only in their 40s, goes for some strange reason. I also found out somebody the other day, can't remember their name, but they were only 30 something, passed away. It's like, what?
Right.
You know?
It's unheard of.
People, you know, our lives are not promised any day except the day you're living. But it's just awkward and strange when somebody that, you know, has the potential of living a lot longer and giving us a lot more is gone.
Right, absolutely. It's a sad turn of events because he wanted to do so much, not just for humanitarian efforts, but also he wanted to elevate women's basketball. And he wanted to be kind of, because he always was very supportive about women's basketball, and he always wanted to assist in any way he can with that to elevate that game. But it's one of those situations where he accomplished so much at 41 that, you know, and for him with the mentality that he has to turn around and want to achieve more and for it to be cut short like this. This is one of those passings and those transitions where it's leaving a lot of people confused and questioning faith. Mm-hmm. And I just want to encourage somebody. I think there's a reason for why certain things happen the way they happen.
Always.
I noticed that a lot of people were, you know, hitting each other up saying, "Yo, I love you, dude." Just based on the fact of this guy is 41, has everything everybody could want, and he still was gone too soon. So if that can happen to him, and he's a world-renowned athlete, that can definitely happen to me or another family member or another friend. So it would to see people actually reach out to people they haven't heard from in a long time, mend fences with people they probably had a little scuffle with. It was good to see. I think I wish it didn't take stuff like that to see that.
With all the crap that's going on in the world, and yes, it was tragic that Kobe died. We crave stuff to bring us together.
Right.
And as tragic as it was, his death, I think, brought a lot of people together, just as you saw in the Grammys.
And I think that was his end game. I think that's something he wanted to see. I think that's the reason why the reason why positive people do the stuff they do, stand up for the injustices that's around, do what they do. They're all about community and this and that. I think the reason why you see that is because at the end of the day, we want to see change on a major level. We want to see that sense of community. We want to see where you know each other's neighbor's name, and if they're going through something, you quick to help out instead of quick to judge. It's one of those situations where we want that sense of community. We want that sense of love. Everybody wants to be loved. It's just that the traumas in life have affected their brain and their heart to act to a certain way in order for survival. Right. So that is pretty much what has happened in a nutshell. In a very broad way, this is what goes on every single day. And that's the reason why that battle between positivity and negativity always comes about, because of that particular situation. So sadly, what has to happen is you have a Kobe incident like this happen, where somebody who has it all, somebody who thinks that they're small in stature, thinks that they're a nobody, looks at Kobe as like a god, and then when they see the situation happen, it's like a sense of reality sets in. And trust me, if there was any way that this could have been different and Kobe could have survived and that whole family and all those lives could have been spared, I would much rather have that happen than what obviously happened that fateful day.
Right.
But it's one of those situations where sadly something as tragic as this is now forcing people to finally come together. And I also want to start by saying this. People, please, out of respect for the family, out of respect for everybody involved, a tragedy is a tragedy. I don't care what big name is involved. That is just as people need to, and I'm only phrasing this because I saw some posts on the internet that were kind of like, why are we comparing tragedies at this point? Why are we acting like that? You know, and you've kind of seen it too. I know you've seen it too, where a tragedy is a tragedy. And we need to be apathetic towards the fact that somebody lost a son, a daughter, you know what I mean? Somebody lost somebody great to them. And fans are grieving. So out of respect for this whole situation, I would appreciate it if we would stop comparing tragedies and start loving on people. The reason why I said that was because I saw some posts flying around with this is like a minor community. There are certain people out there that feel that that we're comparing the deaths of veterans and people that fought for this country and how that doesn't get as much publicity as what Kobe went through. And I think that's a bad way of thinking because they're both tragedies at the end of the day, and both of them need to have the same amount of respect, and both of them shouldn't be compared to one or the other.
Well, the other thing too is our veterans, and again, I'm not taking sides of either side, but our veterans do what they do not to be in the limelight, not to be recognized. I think we do a lot in this country. I don't know about other countries, but I think we do a lot in this country to recognize our veterans. But the statue of a veteran compared to a movie star or somebody who's super popular like Kobe, like Prince, like it's just different. Right. Like, veterans don't necessarily have fans, but they have fans. Right. But nobody's, screaming, "Oh, G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe." You know what I mean? It's right. Like, so it's very different. They're two very different things in my opinion. Right. But I think one of the issues around that is that, people don't really take the time to think before saying things sometimes because of social media. Right. So I think somebody probably who was hurting in a different way, or maybe just had a veteran that was close to them die, were kind of feeling themselves, right, and started posts like that. I'll agree with you that a tragedy is a tragedy, but say the average Joe veteran isn't in the limelight like Kobe is. Mm-hmm. So people are going to naturally be more affected by that because just like my son, who's never met Kobe before, but he was an idol of his. He probably knew every stat, what he ate for breakfast, all his kids' names, all that kind of stuff. And he wouldn't know the veteran. Every time I see something about, X amount of soldiers killed just trying to keep the peace somewhere we don't have any business being, I always stop and pray for those families because I couldn't do that. Right. I was young once and I could have been serving my country, but I knew I wasn't that type of person. Right. So I'm very grateful for the people that do. But they're comparing apples and oranges. Right. It's like you just can't do that. But that's what happens a lot in today's society, and I think that's social media at its best. It's like people don't know the proper way, or people are trying to search for some type of closure, some type of healing or maybe not even that. It's just like they just feel that they have a voice that needs to be heard. Right. It could be it could be venting. I mean, it could be a bunch of different things. We'll say, and sometimes because there's so many people on social media, we don't know their true intentions unless they say it out loud or say it in the video or something, or unless it comes off genuine. But outside of that, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant. Rest in peace to his daughter. And also we need to pray for Vanessa, who is his wife, and the other kids. And also the other families that were affected. That were in there. That were affected by the helicopter crash. We are definitely praying for y'all. Sorry to end this on such a somber note, but this was probably the biggest story of the week easily. Yeah. And we do have to cover this on Audio Airstrike. So, well,
DLF, I want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Where can we find your music at, man, to support it and whatnot?
Well, you can go to darrenfreisen.com, and I'll tell you right now, went to the website to do some stuff the other day, and for some reason it's not working. So I have to investigate that. But darrenfreisen.com is normally where to go. If you're on Facebook, you can go to DLF's music page on Facebook. I have Twitter at Darren Freisen, and Instagram DareBear67.
DareBear67. I see you. Okay.
Sometimes nicknames just stick.
Well, with that being said, this has been another edition of Audio Airstrike. Until next time, everybody, take care.
All right. See you guys.